Good evening, everyone. Tonight we begin our journey in a world shrouded in fog and firewood smoke. A morning where the rooster crows not to inspire you, but to remind you that life, unfortunately, goes on. Welcome to the life of a medieval peasant. And if you've just opened your eyes in the body of Elric, age 23, congratulations, you survived the night. But you might not survive the day. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I'm doing here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you right now. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a small fan for that soft background hum, and let's begin tonight's journey. It's dawn, but not the kind of peaceful golden hour dawn you see in postcards or yoga ads. No, this is medieval dawn, which means your eyelids are crusted with soot. Your blanket weighs as much as a damp sheep, and your nose is full of what can only be described as village bouquet, a charming fusion of damp straw, stale beer, and whatever your cousin ate last night and failed to digest quietly. You're Elric. You're 23 years old, which makes you a local elder by peasant standards. Your back has the flexibility of an abandoned barn door, and your knees, they sound like a bag of angry marbles. Welcome to Middle Age, 14th century edition. You rise slowly, careful not to wake the rest of your family, though that's nearly impossible, because your house has exactly one room, and in that room sleeps everyone you know. Your parents, 3 siblings, a cousin named Edwin who just never left, and possibly a chicken. It's hard to tell in the dark, but something's definitely pecking near your feet. There's no bed, just straw, on dirt. The straw is damp, the dirt is colder than your ex's last letter. You sleep in your clothes because why bother changing when you only own one outfit and the air stings like a slap from nature itself? Outside, the rooster has not stopped. Somewhere in the village, a blacksmith is already hammering away. Ting, ting, the medieval equivalent of your neighbor revving a lawnmower at 6 a.m. You'd yell, but you need him to fix your only shovel before planting season. Also, you don't have a window to yell out of. Just a hole in the wall, stuffed with animal skin, and it's frozen shut. The fire in the hearth is long dead. You can still see the gray remains, but there's no warmth left. Elric's mother, Milla, will probably be up soon to coax life back into it with sticks, straw, and muttered insults. But for now, you're on your own. Your first task, survive the transition from horizontal to vertical. Your feet hit the floor. Instantly, regret. The ground is either damp from last night's leak in the roof or crusted with chicken droppings, possibly both. Your toes, now technically part of the ecosystem, begin the long process of going numb. You shuffle toward the door, careful not to wake the family goat. Yes, it's inside. No, that's not weird. Heat is heat, and goats are basically space heaters with horns. You unlatch the wooden door, well, more of a plank with aspirations, and step outside into the biting air. It's morning in Elric's village. Smoke curls lazily from thatched roofs. Cows moo in the distance, impatient for milking. Somewhere, pigs are already snorting their disapproval at existence. It's a new day, and you're still alive. For now. You've made it out of bed, barely, and taken your first heroic steps onto a floor that somehow manages to feel both soggy and sharp. You're Elric, a 23-year-old medieval peasant, and you've already achieved what could be the highlight of your day. Not dying in your sleep. But don't celebrate just yet. Nature is calling, and in this century, she doesn't knock gently. She kicks the door down. Now you might be thinking, no big deal, I'll just head to the bathroom. Let's gently correct that thought. There is no bathroom, there's no room, there's no bath, there is only a bucket, and even that is being generous. Behind your hut, just past the leaning fence that collapses every third Tuesday, sits what can only be described as a container of shame. A wooden bucket, already half full thanks to Uncle Garrett's questionable turnip stew from the night before. It smells biblical. You hold your breath, do your business, and then, because medieval sanitation is less of a system and more of a challenge, you toss it into the street. Yes, the street. You're supposed to shout "Gardaloo," an old phrase meaning heads up, before throwing anything unspeakable out the window or door. But let's be honest, nobody reacts fast enough. Not at 6 a.m., not when they're just trying to fetch firewood without stepping into something that used to be soup. And this, dear listener, is normal. The streets in a medieval village double as open-air sewage systems. Imagine your local farmer's market, but swap the artisanal cheeses and fresh basil for puddles of filth, slippery stones, and the occasional shoe that no one's willing to reclaim. If you're fortunate enough to live in a town with a public latrine, congratulations. You now get to relieve yourself while sitting shoulder to shoulder with strangers in a glorified wooden shed. There's no door, no privacy, and absolutely no dignity. And the ventilation? Non-existent. You might try small talk, but mostly you focus on not breathing too deeply. Toilet paper? Absolutely not. Most folks wipe with whatever's nearby, straw, moss, rags, or if you're feeling extravagant, a crusty piece of wool. Some don't bother at all, which is exactly why medieval handshakes weren't a thing. Ever wonder why everyone clasped arms like they were reenacting a wrestling match? That's not tradition, that's survival. Now, if you're thinking castles must be better, spoiler alert, they're not. Sure, nobles have a thing called a garderobe, which sounds fancy until you learn it's just a hole in the wall that dumps waste directly into the moat below. That's right, the same moat everyone pretends is a majestic water feature, it's literally full of the Lord's leftovers. And here's the kicker, enemies knew this. In fact, there are actual recorded instances of attackers sneaking into castles through the waste chute, because nothing says stealth mission like crawling through royal excrement at midnight. Back to you, Elric. You've survived the bucket, you've survived the street, your sense of smell has been permanently altered. Time for breakfast, right? Set those expectations low. Lower. Lower still. Breakfast in the medieval world is less meal and more edible object you chew to avoid death. You sit near the hearth if the fire is burning and reach for your daily helping of pottage. What is pottage, you ask? Oh, it's a delightful stew made from grains, root vegetables, a few herbs, and pure desperation. It's been simmering for days, maybe weeks. No one knows anymore. New ingredients just get dumped in on top of the old ones. It's less of a recipe and more of a biological experiment. The pot never gets fully emptied, which means at any given time, your breakfast may contain traces of last Sunday's parsnip or the unfortunate beet incident of 1324. On the side, you're treated to a slice of barley bread. It's hard, dense, possibly weaponized. You don't slice it, you negotiate with it. And it's not just barley. Oh no. Wheat is for the rich. This loaf is padded with sawdust, ground up acorns, or anything else vaguely edible that won't kill you too quickly. And what about drinks? You're not sipping orange juice or cradling a warm latte. You're drinking ale. Weak, watery ale that tastes like someone whispered hops into a puddle. But it's safer than water, which is basically liquid roulette. Even children drink ale. No one's thrilled about it, but hey, it's either that or intestinal devastation. Got meat? Not unless a chicken tripped and died in your front yard. Meat is rare, reserved for holidays, festivals, or funerals. And if you're lucky, someone else's funeral. Cheese? Maybe. If the cow was feeling generous. Eggs? Once in a blue moon. Salt? Worth its weight in gold. Literally. Pepper? Might as well ask for dragon teeth. So here you are, crouched near a sputtering fire, chewing on a bread brick, sipping warm grain juice, and pretending not to notice the rat that just ran across your bowl. And this isn't a bad day. This is a normal day, and yet somehow you go on. You, Elric the peasant, middle-aged at 23, ankle-deep in mud and mystery meat, keep moving forward. Because in this world, survival isn't about thriving, it's about enduring. It's about waking up, eating your pottage of horror, and heading into the fields to work until your bones beg for mercy. But that part's coming next. For now, finish your ale, avoid eye contact with the chicken, it knows, and thank whatever medieval deity you believe in that you didn't fall in the bucket. Because that's how the day starts. And it only gets worse from here. You've eaten. Sort of. More accurately, you've endured a breakfast that fought back. Your mouth is full of scratch marks from barley crust, and your stomach is doing its best impression of a blacksmith's forge. Loud, unpredictable, and very possibly on fire. But there's no time to rest. You, Elric, 23-year-old medieval peasant, have work to do. The kind of work that makes modern gym routines look like a nap. Step outside and the village is fully awake now. Smoke rises from chimneys. Dogs bark. Children chase a goose with grim determination. Somewhere, someone's already yelling about fence repairs. You grab your cloak, which smells like goat because it was probably part of one, and head to the fields. And by fields, we don't mean wide golden plains gently swaying in the breeze. No, your field is a patch of lumpy earth littered with rocks, weeds, and the lingering memory of last season's disappointment. The soil is stubborn, the wind is mocking, and the birds are ready for war. First up, plowing. If you thought plowing was romantic, probably because you've seen paintings with sunlight and perfectly straight furrows, let's adjust that fantasy. You harness 2 oxen, both of whom have names and absolutely zero respect for you. The wooden plow is older than you are and heavier than your hopes. You grip the handles, brace yourself, and shout something encouraging like, "Come on, Berta!" And off you go. The plow cuts through the earth if the earth allows it. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it hits a rock, bounces, and smashes into your shin with the force of every bad decision in your life. The oxen pull. You follow, stumbling, sweating, cursing under your breath. At the end of each row, you pause, wipe your brow, adjust your grip, try not to cry, then you turn around and do it again, and again, and again. You do this until your hands blister, your back screams, and you start hallucinating conversations with a particularly judgmental crow sitting on the fence post. But hey, the field is plowed. Now comes sowing. You sling a sack of seeds around your neck. It's rough wool, scratchy, and filled with barley, your favorite breakfast enemy. You walk the field in rows, scattering seed by hand. Too thick and the plants choke. Too thin and the weeds win. The birds, meanwhile, treat this as their personal buffet. They don't even fear you. You wave your arms, they blink, one flips you off. Probably. By midday, your tunic is soaked in sweat. Your legs are caked in mud. You've inhaled enough dust to consider yourself partially made of dirt. You sit for a moment beneath a tree, if you can find one. Trees are rare. Shade is a rumor. You nibble a piece of yesterday's bread. It breaks in half and stabs your gum. You chew anyway. Then it's back to work. If it's not sowing season, you might be weeding. That means crouching for hours, yanking stubborn green nightmares out of the earth, while praying you don't accidentally uproot the actual crops. Your spine begs for mercy. Your knees have already filed for divorce. The insects swarm like they're unionized. One particularly bold beetle climbs into your ear. You're too tired to care. Maybe it's summer. That means guarding the crops. Because if the birds and bugs weren't enough, you now have deer, rabbits, and probably a neighbor named Thorn who accidentally walks off with a sack of grain every other week. So you stand in the field, squinting into the sun, armed with a stick and increasingly poor impulse control. Then comes harvest. Harvest is chaos. Beautiful, dusty, back-breaking chaos. Everyone helps. Men, women, children, that guy who never talks. Everyone. You wield a sickle, slicing wheat until your wrists ache. You tie sheaves until your fingers cramp. You do this for hours, and racing against the weather because one surprise storm can ruin everything. And storms love surprises. The cut grain gets hauled to a central area. You thresh it with a flail, 2 wooden sticks connected by a chain. You swing, you whack, you repeat. It's rhythmic, it's tiring, it's oddly therapeutic until you accidentally smack yourself in the shin and rethink every life choice. Then comes winnowing. You toss the grain into the air, letting the breeze blow away the chaff. Of course, sometimes there's no breeze. Sometimes there's too much. Sometimes the wind blows everything into the pig pen, and you just stand there watching, silently screaming inside. Once the grain is cleaned, you bag it up. A portion goes to the Lord, another portion to the miller, who will grind it into flour and take his cut, usually more than is strictly fair. You don't argue. The last guy who did now works as a scarecrow. Not officially, just very still. The straw is saved. It'll become thatch for the roof, stuffing for mattresses, or food for the livestock. Nothing is wasted. Everything has a purpose, even if that purpose is desperately trying to avoid starvation. You trudge back home as the sun sets, your feet dragging, your face covered in dust, your soul moderately detached. You pass other villagers, all equally filthy, all wearing the same expression of, well, that happened. Inside your hut, the fire is going again. Your mother, Mila, stirs the pottage. It smells different. You're not sure if that's a good thing. Your little sister Anya is asleep, curled up next to the goat. Your father is already snoring in the corner. The room is warm, smoky, alive. You sit down, sip some ale, gnaw on a crust of bread, and feel your muscles start to tighten into medieval knots. But you made it. You worked from dawn to dusk. You earn the right to sleep on a straw pile and dream about slightly softer straw piles, because tomorrow you do it all over again. Night falls quickly in Elric's world, like a curtain drawn by someone in a hurry to forget the day. The sun slips away behind the thatched rooftops, casting long shadows across the muddy paths of the village. There are no street lamps, no warm porch lights, no neon signs blinking open late. Just darkness, thick, heavy, all-consuming. The hearth glows faintly in the center of the hut. It's not a fireplace, not really, just a circle of stones with blackened wood that smokes more than it burns. The chimney is a hole in the roof. Unless a bird has decided to nap in it again, in which case the smoke just swirls around the room, coating everything in a fine layer of ash and regret. Elric sits close to the flames, nursing a wooden bowl of pottage that has entered its experimental phase. He can't identify anything in it except what might be a turnip and a questionable chunk of something that once had legs. He eats it anyway. Hunger does that to a person. It lowers your standards until edible becomes a suggestion, not a rule. Around him, the rest of the family settles into the rhythms of evening. His mother, Milla, mends a tunic by firelight, squinting at each stitch like it owes her money. His little sister, Anya, is playing with a doll made from bundled rags and straw. She's giving it a haircut with a broken knife. The doll looks terrified. It's a normal night. Outside, the village quiets down. The blacksmith's hammer has stopped. The geese have stopped honking, probably because someone finally ate one. The only sounds left are the creaking of wooden beams, the wind slipping through the cracks in the walls, and the distant howling of something that is definitely not a wolf, but also not a wolf. Elric adds a handful of straw to the floor near the fire, fluffs it twice for morale, and lies down. His cloak serves as a blanket, his arm a pillow. The floor greets him with its usual enthusiasm, cold, hard, and faintly damp. A true classic. And yet, this is luxury, because not every night is calm. Not every evening ends with warmish stew and smoke-induced drowsiness. Sometimes it ends with knocking, loud, impatient, rhythmic knocking, which is exactly what happens tonight. The door rattles on its leather hinges. The whole hut seems to shudder. Everyone freezes. Even the goat. Milla rises slowly, takes a deep breath, and opens the door. It's not bandits. Not this time. It's Reynold, the steward of Lord Ulric's estate. He's wearing the expression of a man who enjoys his job a little too much, and a cloak that has clearly never seen dirt. He holds a parchment in one hand and a sneer in the other. Elric, you're needed at the manor. Not a question, not a request, a command wrapped in vowels. Elric stands, groaning softly as his knees click into place like mismatched puzzle pieces. He nods. He doesn't ask why. He never does. The manor calls, and peasants answer. He follows Reynold through the village, past shuttered homes and flickering lanterns. The mud sucks at his boots. The wind tugs his cloak. Above them, stars peek through the clouds, watching like curious gods. The manor looms at the edge of the village. Stone walls, real windows, a roof that doesn't leak, and a door that doesn't sag. It's practically science fiction. Inside, warmth hits like a wave. The floors are wooden. There's a table, chairs, even a rug, woven from colors Elric didn't know existed. It smells like meat and herbs and things peasants only taste on feast days. Lord Ulric stands by the fire, wearing a fur-lined robe and the kind of beard that implies authority. He doesn't look at Elric at first, just gestures. There's a problem in the granary, he says finally, as if announcing the weather. A rat problem, Reynold adds with relish, but not the furry kind. Elric knows what that means. Someone's been stealing grain, and when the nobles want answers, they start with the people least able to give them. He's marched to the granary, a dark, cold building that smells like oats and panic. There are sacks, some are torn, others are gone. It's obvious someone's been helping themselves. Reynold turns to Elric. You're responsible for this section, aren't you? Technically, yes, but not alone. He shares duties with 3 others, but saying that won't help. It never helps. He nods. Reynold smiles. It's the kind of smile that belongs in cautionary tales. You'll repay it in work. And just like that, Elric is sentenced. No trial. No defense. No questions. Just more labor, more hours, more aches, because someone else was hungry enough to steal and Elric was unlucky enough to be nearby. He returns home long after midnight. The hut is quiet. Everyone's asleep. He doesn't wake them. He just lies down, stares at the ceiling, and tries to breathe through the taste of injustice. This, too, is normal. Morning will come soon, and with it, more work, more pottage, more pain. But for now, there's rest. Uneasy, smoky, and interrupted by the occasional flea, because in Elric's world, peace is always temporary. Hunger, however, is not. Morning doesn't gently arrive in Elric's world. It slams in like a drunk guest through a crooked door. There's no sunrise moment with birds softly chirping. There's a rooster. Always. His name is probably something innocent like Pip, but his soul is pure chaos. Pip doesn't crow to greet the day. He crows to declare war. Elric groans awake, body aching from sleeping on a straw pile that now feels more like a basket of kitchen knives. He blinks at the ceiling, which has a new crack in it, impressive considering it hasn't rained in days. Around him, the hut is already stirring. Someone's boiling something suspicious over the fire. The goat is chewing on something it definitely shouldn't. His sister Anya is trying to tie a rag around her doll's head like a crown. Royal ambitions, despite having only one eye and 3 pieces of straw for a torso. But Elric can't linger. Today is no ordinary day. Today is collection day, which means the Lord's taxmen will be making their joyful rounds, gathering grain, livestock, tools, pride, and anything else not nailed down. And a few things that are. Elric's job is simple: prepare the grain sacks, brush the mud off the only goat, and try not to say anything that'll get him fined, flogged, or relocated to voluntary castle maintenance duty, also known as moving rocks until you become one. He steps outside into the village square, which is already buzzing with that special type of quiet panic. Mothers are sweeping doorsteps like it'll make a difference. Children are herded indoors before they can accidentally insult anyone important. Men are checking sacks of wheat like they're hoping one will spontaneously turn into gold. The air smells like stress and boiled cabbage. A classic. Elric joins the others near the Lord's cart, a monstrosity of wood and iron that looks like it wants to fall apart but is held together by fear and taxes. The tax collector, Sir Aldred, sits atop it like a vulture in velvet. His assistant, a man named Gervin, reads names off a scroll as long as a fishing net and twice as tangled. Elric, son of Milla. Elric steps forward, trying to look respectful and not at all like someone who spent the night swearing into a pillow. "You owe 2 sacks of barley and 1 of oats," Gervin says without looking up. Elric nods. He knew this. He planned for this. What he didn't plan for was the missing corner of the second barley sack, which now has a noticeable nibble mark. He discreetly shifts it to the back of the pile, hoping no one notices. They notice. Aldred's nose wrinkles like he's just smelled commoner, which he has. "Rodents?" "No, sir," Elric lies. "Just unique stitching." A pause. Then a sigh. "It'll do." Barely. The grain is hoisted onto the cart. A man in the back stamps Elric's name next to a checkbox on a wooden tally board. One wrong move and that check becomes a cross. And crosses, in this context, are very bad. Elric steps back. Transaction complete. Dignity. Intact-ish. Behind him, things are not going so well. Old Matka, the widow with 3 geese and 1 stubborn leg, is arguing with Gervin about her tithe. She claims she already gave grain last week. Gervin insists that never happened. The truth is probably somewhere between deliberate forgetting and creative math. Voices rise, people stare, the tension sharpens like a knife on a whetstone. Then, miraculously, the steward waves it off. "Take the geese," he says. Matka's face crumples like old parchment. Those geese were her winter hope, her warmth, her eggs, her only company. Now, they're waddling onto a wagon bound for someone else's dinner table. And just like that, it's over. The cart moves on. The collectors vanish in a cloud of dust, feathers, and barely concealed contempt. The villagers disperse, quieter now. There's no cheer, just relief. The kind that settles over a place like dust, thin, dry, and waiting to be stirred up again. Elric returns home, empty-handed and exhausted, even though the sun is barely past mid-morning. He doesn't speak. No one does. Not when everyone has just watched a year's work rolled away on wheels. In the afternoon, he joins a few others for fence duty. The pasture wall collapsed again. Probably goats. Possibly local children with ideas about rebellion. Either way, it's repair time. They lift logs, haul stones, restuff gaps with mud, straw, and colorful language. While they work, the conversation wanders. Quiet, muttered exchanges about rumors. Some say the next village over had a fire. Others say a tax collector fell into a well and mysteriously drowned with a perfectly square bruise on his forehead. Elric listens. He doesn't speak. He's thinking about Matka, about the geese, about how one missing sack could have meant the same for him. That night, the fire is low and the pottage thinner than usual. Anya falls asleep with her ragdoll crown tilted sideways. Milla is still mending things, but now by feel more than sight. Elric stares at the wall, which doesn't offer much in the way of answers. Outside, the wind howls. Inside, so does the silence. Elric wakes to the sound of thunder, not from the sky, but from his stomach. It growls like a war drum, announcing that once again, the pottage did not do its job. Hunger is less of a feeling now and more of a lifestyle. He blinks at the pale morning light slipping through the cracks in the wall. Rain is coming. He can smell it in the air, in the cold dampness that seeps up from the dirt floor like the ghost of a swamp. Today's chore isn't glamorous, not that any are, but it's especially dreaded: hauling water. The village well is a decent walk away, not miles, but far enough that your shoulders remember every step. The buckets are wooden, leaky, and heavy. The path is uneven, muddy, and occasionally booby-trapped by particularly aggressive chickens. Elric throws on his cloak, grabs the yoke, a wooden bar worn across the shoulders with ropes dangling down for 2 buckets, and steps outside. The sky is a gray blanket. The village is quiet, the kind of quiet that means people are awake but not enthusiastic about it. At the well, there's already a queue. Old Tomlin is there, muttering to himself and swatting at invisible insults. 2 boys are chasing each other with sticks, and Brida, the weaver's daughter, is trying to convince a stubborn donkey that mud is not quicksand. It's not working. Elric waits his turn. When he finally reaches the front, he lowers his bucket. The rope squeaks like it's complaining about its own existence. He draws water. Then again, the buckets fill, and he lifts them onto the yoke. They slosh. They always slosh. The return trip is a balance act, shoulders burning, arms tight, every step a gamble. He makes it home with most of the water still in the buckets and only a little in his shoes. Milla takes one look at him and hands him a piece of cloth to dry off. It's technically clean, which means it was only used once this week. Elric wipes his face, sets the water down, and catches his breath. But there's no rest. The day's barely started. Today is baking day, which sounds pleasant, cozy even, until you realize medieval baking is less warm kitchen and cinnamon rolls and more smoke, ash, and bread that could double as a weapon. They don't have a proper oven. No one does. There's a communal bakehouse near the edge of the village, used on rotation. Elric's family has a time slot today, which means they've spent the last 2 days grinding grain, mixing dough, and praying to whichever saint handles carbohydrates. He helps Milla carry the dough, big, lumpen shapes wrapped in cloth and hope. The bakehouse is a squat stone building that always smells slightly burnt. Inside, it's hot, the kind of hot that makes your eyebrows retreat. The oven is a deep, soot-black maw with a fire burning inside. The woman before them is just finishing. She pulls out her loaves, flat, dark, slightly smoking. A few have split. One has fused to the stone. She shrugs, packs them up, and leaves without comment. It's Elric's turn. He and Milla slide their loaves into the oven using a long wooden paddle. The heat blasts back at them like a dragon with bad breath. They wait. No timers here, just instinct and the smell of potential failure. While they wait, Milla mutters about the last time they overbaked and ended up with a defensive loaf, a crust so hard it could chip teeth or scare wolves. After a while, the bread is deemed done. Elric pulls it out. It's fine. Not perfect, not terrible, just edible, which, in this world, is a victory. Back at home, the loaves are set to cool. One gets eaten almost immediately. Anya breaks off a corner and chews it like it's treasure. She smiles. Milla looks pleased. Elric allows himself a rare moment of pride. Then someone knocks at the door. It's not Reynold, thankfully. Just Hob, a neighbor. His cow has broken through the fence, again, and is now enthusiastically grazing on someone's turnip patch. He needs help. Elric grabs his boots, which are more holes than leather, and follows. The cow in question is named Bessie, and she is both the most docile and most frustrating animal in the village. She wanders. Constantly. Fence? Suggestion. Boundaries? Optional. Together, Elric and Hob wrangle Bessie back to her yard, repairing the fence with fresh branches and curses. It's muddy work, thankless, but it's done. Hob thanks him with a turnip. Just one. But it's a good one, firm, fresh, and not yet nibbled by mice. Elric takes it back home like a prize. The rest of the afternoon is quieter. Milla spins wool while humming a tune older than memory. Anya is drawing pictures in the ash with a stick. Elric sharpens a tool, lost in thought. He thinks about Bessie, about bread, about the fence, small things, daily things, but all of them tethered to survival. As dusk falls, the sky turns a muted pink. Smoke rises from chimneys. The village, battered but intact, settles into another evening. Elric eats a slice of bread with a bit of turnip. It's dry but satisfying, and for a moment, everything is okay. Just for a moment. Dusk comes early and fast in the village, like someone blew out the sun with a sigh. The day's pale light shrinks behind the woods, leaving behind a sky the color of wet slate. Elric sits near the hearth, poking at the embers with a stick that's doing its best to become firewood itself. The hut is quiet, filled only with the soft rustle of wool and the occasional snort from the goat, who has once again claimed the warmest corner of the floor. Tonight feels different. Not because anything dramatic has happened, no plagues, no tax collectors, no cows in turnip patches, but because it's quiet. Unnervingly quiet. The kind of quiet that makes you think something is listening. But Milla doesn't seem bothered. She hums an old melody while spinning wool, her hands moving with mechanical certainty. Anya hums along from her corner, braiding her straw doll's hair into something vaguely majestic. Elric, meanwhile, watches the flames dance. The fire, though small, is doing its best. It flickers in shades of orange and blue, casting shadows across the low ceiling. Those shadows stretch, shrink, sway. A private theater of ghostly shapes that play across the walls like forgotten dreams. Elric's mind wanders. He thinks about his childhood, if you can call it that. He remembers the first time he held a hoe taller than he was, the blisters that felt like badges, the look on Milla's face when he managed to plant a straight row. He remembers winter nights so cold the inside of their hut grew icicles, and summer days so hot the mud cracked into puzzles. He remembers laughter. Not often, but it happened. Back before Father died. Father, big hands, deep voice, the smell of smoke and soil. He used to lift Elric high into the air and pretend he was a knight flying over the village. Elric believed it, for a while. When he died, fever, quick and merciless, everything shifted. Elric had to become bigger, stronger, faster. There was no room for grief, just more dirt, more chores, more survival. Now, at 23, Elric is already older than his father was when he passed. That realization sticks in his chest like a splinter. He doesn't notice Milla watching him until she speaks. "You're quiet tonight." He nods. "Just thinking." "Dangerous," she says with a faint smile. "Especially in winter." He doesn't reply. She doesn't push. That's the thing about peasants. They know when not to pry. Life already digs its hands into you every day. You learn to leave each other's bruises alone. Outside, the wind picks up. It whistles through the cracks in the wall, carrying with it the distant sound of church bells. Faint. Hollow. A reminder that tomorrow is the Sabbath. The one day Elric doesn't work in the fields, not because he doesn't want to. He'd gladly plant turnips just to keep his muscles warm, but because the church says rest is holy. And in a world this exhausting, even God has to schedule downtime. But rest is relative. For Elric, Sunday means attending Mass, which means walking to the stone chapel at the edge of the village, kneeling on cold floors, and pretending not to nod off during Father Bjort's sermons, which always last exactly 1 hour longer than anyone wants them to. Still, it's a change, and change, however small, is sacred. Anya begins to nod off, her doll slipping from her fingers. Milla sets down her spindle and nudges Elric. Time for bed. He doesn't argue. The fire is banked, the hut dims. Everyone settles onto their straw piles like puzzle pieces falling into place. Elric stares at the ceiling. He counts the rafters, the cracks, the creaks. Eventually he drifts. Dreams come slow and strange. He's in a field knee-deep in golden wheat. But the sky above is dark and something large moves behind the trees. A sound, low, guttural, ancient, rumbles through the ground. He tries to run, but the wheat grabs at his legs like hands. He calls out, but no one answers. He wakes with a start. It's still dark. The fire is just a whisper. Milla snores softly. Anya mumbles in her sleep. Outside, a storm begins. Rain taps on the roof, soft at first, then louder. A few drops slip through and land on Elric's forehead. He shifts his blanket and closes his eyes again, trying to reclaim the dream, but it's gone. Instead, he lies there listening. To the rain, to the wind, to the rhythm of a life lived close to the earth. There's no comfort in it. But there is truth, and for Elric, that's enough, for now. Sunday morning in Elric's village begins the same way as every other day. Cold, muddy, and carried on the back of a very loud rooster with no concept of mercy. But unlike the other 6 days of bone-breaking work, today brings a strange, almost mythical concept: rest. Of course, rest doesn't mean lounging in bed until noon or sipping something with foam on top. It means you don't plow, you don't sow, you don't fix fences, milk cows, or chase livestock with a broom, but you do walk, and kneel, and stand, and pray. A lot. The church bells ring slowly in the mist, pulling people from their homes like a low, holy magnet. Elric rises, his body objecting with every creak of his spine. He rubs sleep from his eyes, finds his least damp cloak, and smooths down his hair with water that may or may not be slightly gray from the washing barrel. Milla is already dressed, wrapping a scarf around her head. Anya is hopping from one foot to the other, excited for her once-a-week excuse to wear the good shoes, the ones with only one hole instead of 3. As a family, they step into the fog. The path to the chapel is well-trodden. Boots, hooves, and time have turned it into a narrow trail of flattened grass and stubborn mud. Villagers walk in small groups, nodding politely, speaking in murmurs. No one wants to look too joyful. It is, after all, a day of solemn reflection. The chapel itself is made of stone, mossy and crooked, with a wooden door that groans dramatically as it opens. Inside, it smells of wet wool, candle wax, and centuries of whispered regrets. The floor is cold. The benches are hard. The stained glass is minimal, just one window showing what may or may not be a fish turning into bread, or vice versa. Father Beort stands at the altar, a tall, gaunt figure with the permanent expression of someone who's just tasted something sour and isn't over it yet. His sermons are legendary, not for their inspiration, but for their duration. The man can talk. Elric and his family settle in near the back, not because they're late, but because sitting up front is an honor no one actually wants. It comes with eye contact and potential questions. The Mass begins. There's chanting, standing, sitting, kneeling, repeating words in Latin that most villagers don't understand, but have memorized phonetically, like holy karaoke. Father Beort preaches about humility, about suffering, about how a good peasant should endure hardship with grace because heaven is just over the horizon. The horizon, however, is vague, like most promises. At one point, a baby cries, an old man coughs with dramatic flair, someone farts quietly and with great dignity. Life goes on. Elric's mind wanders, as it always does. He looks at the wooden beams above. He imagines what it would be like to sleep on one, warm, quiet, out of reach of goats. He looks at the stained glass again, now glowing with morning light. He wonders if the fish is smiling or just surprised. Then he remembers he's supposed to be listening. And so, Father Beort booms, we are reminded that toil is not punishment, but blessing. No one cheers. No one nods. They've all toiled. None feel particularly blessed. After what feels like 2 harvest seasons, the service ends. The congregation shuffles outside, blinking in the light like animals released from a barn. Conversations start, soft at first, then louder. Children run. Elders gossip. Someone passes out a turnip. Elric doesn't head home just yet. Instead, he walks with a few others to the village square, where announcements are made, marriages are posted, and arguments are quietly settled before they become duels involving sticks and hurt pride. Today's news: the next village over suffered a fire. No deaths, but several homes lost. Donations of grain or cloth are encouraged. Elric makes a note to talk with Milla. They don't have much, but not much is still something. Another announcement: a traveling merchant is due next week. He'll bring salt, cloth, maybe even dried fruit if the road hasn't robbed him blind. There's quiet excitement. Trade days are rare and precious, like someone opening a window to the rest of the world. As the crowd disperses, Elric wanders toward the nearby stream. It's narrow, clear, and mercifully untainted by waste. He sits on a rock, rolls up his sleeves, and splashes cold water on his face. The chill jolts him awake, or maybe alive. He watches leaves float by. A beetle rides one like a tiny boat. It's peaceful, oddly, almost like the earth forgot to be cruel for a moment. Footsteps approach. It's Bryda, the weaver's daughter. She nods and sits on a nearby stone without asking. That's how people do things here. Silence first, words later. After a while, she speaks. You fell asleep during Mass again. I didn't snore. She shrugs. Small victory. They sit in silence again. Elric glances at her. She's watching the stream. Her face is thoughtful, her fingers tracing patterns on her skirt. "You ever think about leaving?" he asks. She doesn't look at him. "Where would we go?" He shrugs. "Anywhere that doesn't smell like turnip stew." Bryda snorts softly. "Pear. Everywhere smells like turnip stew. Some places just call it something else." They both laugh, the kind of tired, private laugh that doesn't ask for more. Eventually, they stand. The sun is higher now. There's still time to nap, mend clothes, maybe sneak a crumb of cheese if the goat hasn't claimed it. As they head back, Elric feels lighter. Not because anything's changed, but because for once, the world has paused. Sunday isn't freedom, but it's a breath. And for now, that's enough. The Monday after the Sabbath does not tiptoe back into Elric's life. It barges in wearing muddy boots and demands unpaid labor. The faint calm of yesterday is gone, replaced by the sharp sting of cold wind and the cruel thud of a shovel hitting frozen ground. The fields have summoned him, and unlike polite invitations, this one cannot be declined. Elric pulls on his cloak, stiff from yesterday's streamside sitting, and ties it with a bit of frayed twine. Milla hands him a crust of bread that could double as a defensive tool. It's breakfast, technically, though it might also qualify as medieval dental training. Today is muck spreading day. Now, if that sounds like something vaguely unpleasant, it is. The village's crops don't fertilize themselves, and without a steady supply of compost, the soil turns to dust. So what do they spread? A hearty blend of dung, urine-soaked straw, decomposing scraps, and whatever else the animals have so generously donated. And guess who gets to do it? Elric joins a few others on the outskirts of the village where the muck heap sits like a monument to suffering. The smell is impressive, a rich, layered scent of barnyard tragedy and microbial ambition. It clings to your clothes, your skin, your soul. No one speaks at first, they just grab pitchforks and begin. Scoop, sling, spread, repeat. It's a rhythm, a punishment, a necessity. Each forkful slaps against the earth with a wet noise that should not exist. Elric breathes through his mouth, which helps until he realizes he's now tasting it. Still, there are upsides. For one, muck spreading means you're not inside the barn, where the animals treat humans as mobile scratching posts and hay dispensers. Also, it's technically exercise. Horrible, endless, nostril-searing exercise. The older men work slower, with the grim resignation of people who've done this 1,000 times. The younger ones try to make a game of it, who can fling it furthest, who can hit the rock on purpose. Laughter is rare, but not impossible. Misery loves company, and medieval peasantry has no shortage of either. By midday, Elric's boots are unrecognizable. His arms ache. His face is speckled with evidence of the morning's efforts. He wipes his brow with a sleeve and instantly regrets it. The smell has infiltrated every fiber of his being. Lunch is taken on a patch of dryish grass. The bread is the same. The pottage, ladled from a wooden container brought from the village, has become less of a soup and more of a philosophy. Elric chews slowly, grateful for heat, even if it tastes like boiled regret. Someone passes around a jug of ale, thin and weak, but cold and not from the well, which makes it liquid gold. A few sips ease the stiffness in his limbs. For a moment, the group sits in silence, watching a hawk circle high above. It's the only creature here not covered in something unfortunate. Back to it. Scoop. Sling. Spread. The afternoon passes in a blur of motion and muscle memory. By the time the sun begins to dip, Elric has emptied 3 carts worth of muck and questions all of his life choices, including being born. Back at home, he strips off his outer layer and leaves it by the door. The smell tries to follow him inside, but Milla is prepared. She lights a bundle of dried herbs and waves it around like she's conducting an exorcism. Anya pinches her nose. "You smell like the pig pen had a baby with the latrine." Elric grunts, half amused, half dead inside. Milla ladles dinner. It's barley again. Possibly the same barley. It's hard to tell anymore. Elric eats in silence, sipping hot broth and staring into the fire like it might have answers. Later that evening, Reynald appears at the door, not to collect taxes this time, but to deliver news. "The Lord's messenger returns tomorrow," he says. "We need 3 men to help transport supplies back to the keep. You'll be one." Elric doesn't argue. He nods. It's not a request. Transport duty is both blessing and curse. It means a chance to leave the village, a rarity, but it also means long hours on foot, hauling things heavier than hope. Still, it's different, and different is something. Reynold disappears into the night, leaving behind only muddy footprints and tension. Elric turns to Milla. "I'll be gone most of tomorrow," she nods. "Bring back news. And if they have salt, ask. Just ask." Salt. The eternal luxury, used for preserving meat, flavoring food, and curing wounds, also rarer than a dry blanket. That night, Elric lies in his straw bed, sore in places he didn't know existed, but oddly alert. Tomorrow he'll walk farther than he has in weeks. He might see new faces, hear rumors from distant towns, maybe even catch a glimpse of the Lord's Keep, something he's only seen from the edge of a field. He stares at the ceiling and wonders, will the world look different from the road? And if it does, what then? Sleep comes slowly, wrapped in the scent of smoke, sweat, and what can only be described as earthy doom. Because for now, Elric is still here, still standing, and tomorrow is already waiting. The morning air is sharper than usual, slicing across Elric's cheeks like winter, reminding everyone it's not quite done. The village hasn't fully woken up yet. Chimneys cough out their first trails of smoke, and the rooster, mercifully, has gone hoarse. Elric tightens the leather strap on his pack and checks his boots, which are holding together mostly through stubbornness and dried mud. Today, he's on transport duty. The messenger from the Lord's estate arrived at dawn, bringing with him a list and a cart. Elric and two others, Hob, the man with eternal bad knees, and Rig, who once tried to milk a bull as an experiment, were chosen to accompany the cart back to the keep with supplies. The cart is already half loaded with sacks of grain, jugs of oil, and something covered in cloth that smells suspiciously like dried fish and disappointment. Reynold, never one to miss a chance to supervise, stands by the reins, pointing dramatically at nothing in particular. Don't dawdle, don't detour, and if something tries to eat you on the road, just run faster than the other two. Inspirational, really. The path to the keep is long and winding, stretching past the edge of the village, through the woods, across a shallow river, and finally up a hill where the stone walls of Lord Ulric's estate loom like a frown made of rock. As they set off, the wheels groan, the mule sighs, and Elric silently prays that Rig doesn't do anything experimental. The road is quiet, muffled by frost and flanked by skeletal trees. Birds chirp half-heartedly. Somewhere in the distance, a fox shrieks, a sound like a haunted flute. The cart wobbles over every bump and the conversation stays minimal. Too cold to talk, too early to joke. But as the sun climbs higher, the frost softens. Elric's fingers regain feeling and the world becomes less cruel and more manageable. They pass another village, smaller than theirs, with smoke curling from just two chimneys. A few children wave. An old woman watches them with the intensity of someone expecting a prophecy. Rig waves back and nearly falls off the cart. So far, so good. By midday, they stop near the river, a sluggish, icy trickle that pretends to be majestic. Elric drinks from a flask of ale, eats a piece of barley bread that tastes like pocket lint and stretches his legs. Hob rubs his knees. Rig inspects a beetle. Then, footsteps, soft, measured, not animal. Three men emerge from the woods, not bandits, strictly speaking, just opportunists. Ragged cloaks, belts with too many knives, eyes that calculate. Afternoon, one says, his smile full of suggestion and missing teeth. Elric straightens. Hob slowly stands, leaning on his staff. Rig, blissfully unaware, holds up the beetle like it's the guest of honor. "Where are you headed with that cart?" the man asks. "To the keep." Elric replies, "Lord's business." The smile flickers. "Right, wouldn't want to delay that." A pause, heavy, tense. Then, with a shrug, the man steps back. Safe travels. They vanish into the woods as quickly as they appeared. The three peasants exhale as one. Rig finally looks up. "Nice blokes." No one replies. They get the cart moving again, faster now. No one speaks for at least a mile. By the time the keep appears in the distance, the sun is behind clouds and the wind has picked up. The estate is imposing. Tall towers, thick walls, a gate that looks more like a jaw than an entrance. Guards watch from above, spears ready, expressions blank. Elric always forgets how clean everything looks here. The stones are swept. The air doesn't reek of wet animals. Even the mud seems more organized. They're waved in without ceremony. Inside, a steward checks their delivery. He nods, grunts, makes marks on a scroll, and disappears. The cart is taken. The mule, too. They're given bread, real bread, white and soft, and a slice of cured meat that nearly brings Rig to tears. While they eat in the corner of a stone hall, Elric takes it all in. The banners on the walls, the carved beams, A girl his age, possibly a servant, walks past with a basket of lemons. Actual lemons. He didn't even know those were real. A soldier passes by, armored and polished, with a face so clean-shaven it looks fictional. He doesn't even glance at them. Why would he? Peasants deliver, nobles dine. The system works, mostly for the people who made the system. After eating, they're dismissed with a nod, no coins, no thanks, just a boot scuff and off you go. They start the journey back, slower now, tired and heavier with the weight of unspoken thoughts. Elric walks in silence, head down, replaying the image of that hallway, that lemon, that life. And for the first time, something stirs. Not jealousy, not quite, but a question. Is this all there is? Because now he knows there's a world out there with clean stone, soft bread, and citrus fruit, and somehow that's more dangerous than any bandit. By the time Elric returns to the village, dusk has already swallowed most of the light. The sky is a dull gray canvas, the sun barely a smear behind clouds. His legs ache from the journey, his boots are soaked from a stream they had to ford without a bridge, and his stomach, despite the earlier miracle of meat and soft bread, has started its usual protest march. The village greets them with the usual lack of enthusiasm. No one runs to meet them. No one asks how it went, because they all know how it went. You leave with hope, you return with silence. Milla meets Elric at the doorway. Her eyes scan his face for bruises, news, or both. You're late. There were complications. Complications or rig? Same thing. She nods and turns back inside. No further questions. Elric is grateful. The fire is already lit, casting soft shadows on the wooden walls. Anya is curled up with her straw doll, who now sports a bright red thread sash. Elric doesn't ask where the thread came from. He doesn't want to know. Dinner is simple. Pottage, again. Milla has added something green and fibrous. Elric chews and decides not to identify it. Hunger wins. As they eat, Milla finally breaks the quiet. Did you see the keep? Elric nods. Went inside, dropped supplies. Was it different? He pauses. How do you explain a place where the windows have glass and the bread doesn't break your teeth? Yes, he says. Very. She doesn't press. Maybe she doesn't want to know what she's missing. That night, Elric lies awake longer than usual. The straw beneath him feels unfamiliar, too flat, too real. His mind is full, not with dreams, but with questions. The keep, the hallway, the lemon. It wasn't even the most beautiful thing. It wasn't gold or silk, it was just unexpected, bright, real. And that's what gnaws at him. The next morning arrives with all the usual fanfare, aching joints, cold air, and a rooster now fully recovered from its sore throat. Elric helps fetch water, repairs a fence, avoids Rig, who is trying to invent portable soup using mashed peas and string. It does not go well, but he can't focus. Everything feels off, smaller, louder. At midday, he visits Bryda. She's spinning wool on the porch, fingers moving faster than her thoughts. Her eyes narrow when she sees him. You're back, regrettably. Did you see anything interesting? He hesitates. Then, lemons. Bryda blinks. I'm sorry? They had lemons in a basket, just lying there, like they weren't magic. She stares at him, then bursts out laughing. You left for a day and returned a philosopher. I'm serious. So am I, she says, wiping her eyes. You saw fruit. Congratulations. Would you like a statue? He doesn't smile. Bryda notices. Elric, she says softly, you're thinking dangerous things. What if I am? You can't eat thoughts. Can't eat mud either, but we try, she sighs. You're not the first to want more. I don't want more. He trails off. I want to know why we have so little. Bryda's smile fades. That's not a safe question. I know. He leaves before she can say more. For the rest of the day, Elric works in silence. The village bustles around him, normal as ever. Children play with sticks, women bake, men argue over oxen like they're scholars debating philosophy. Everything continues, but he feels it, the shift, the weight. That night, the wind picks up, clouds gather. A storm brews, low and grumbling like an old man with opinions. Elric sits by the fire, staring into it. Milla is sewing. Anya is humming. He says without looking up, have you ever wanted to leave? The needle stills. Every day, Milla says, but wanting doesn't fill the pot. He nods, then quietly, would you stop me? No. A pause. But I'd miss you. He swallows. I haven't decided anything. I know, she says, but the fire's already in your eyes. Outside, the first drops of rain tap on the roof. Inside, everything is still. Elric closes his eyes and breathes. Tomorrow, he tells himself, is just another day. But tonight he lets the question burn. The storm that had teased the village last night arrives with full drama in the early hours. It doesn't knock politely. It crashes in with wind like a drunk giant and rain like a punishment. Elric is jolted awake by a gust that slams the wooden shutter against the wall. He leaps up, heart thumping, straw stuck to his cheek. Milla is already up, tying down a loose corner of the thatched roof with a length of twine and something resembling a prayer. Grab the bucket. She barks. Elric moves fast. Water is coming through the roof in 3 places, possibly 4. One drip lands directly on the goat, who seems personally offended. The wind howls, thunder grumbles like it is remembering old grievances. Rain slams against the walls like someone trying to get in. For a while it's chaos, plugging leaks, moving Anya to the driest corner, throwing extra straw on the fire so it doesn't die from the humidity. Eventually, the storm settles into something more manageable. Less divine wrath, more deeply inconvenient. Elric sits near the door, drenched wide-eyed. The village will be a mess. And it is. By morning, the paths are rivers, the fields are bogs, and someone's chicken is now living 2 huts away. A section of the common fence has collapsed. A tree has fallen onto the blacksmith's roof, thankfully missing both him and his anvil. Elric spends the morning helping clear debris, hauling branches, reinforcing fences with rope, and very creative carpentry. It's the kind of work that leaves you soaked, scraped, and intimately familiar with the difference between mud and disappointment. The villagers work together because storms don't care about grudges. Even Rig, who once accidentally set a hay bale on fire while inventing hot straw, is pulling his weight, dragging a bundle of kindling behind him like a soggy hero. Around midday, the sky finally clears. Not sunshine, exactly, but a gray-blue truce. Elric and Bryda meet by the stream, which is now twice as wide and filled with floating bits of someone's roof. She looks at him. "You still thinking about lemons?" He laughs, bitter and short. "I'd settle for dry socks. Ambition, dangerous." He sits on a damp rock. "Everything is dangerous." Bryda folds her arms. "You thinking of Lee?" Doesn't answer immediately. Then, "I don't know." "You wouldn't survive a week out there." "Maybe." She studies him. "And if you did survive, then what?" He shrugs. "I don't know. See the world, find work, learn something new." Bryda gestures around. "There's work here. There's learning. There's a ceiling here," Elric says, "made of wood, straw, and fear." Bryda doesn't respond. They sit in silence, watching a dead rat float by on a plank of wood like it's off to conquer a tiny rat kingdom. That afternoon, Elric helps patch the roof of the chapel. Father Beort oversees, mostly by pointing and muttering about divine protection while holding a very dry cup of tea. Elric climbs the ladder, his hands raw from hauling shingles. From the top, the village looks small, fragile, but full of life. Smoke curls from chimneys. Children chase each other through puddles. Someone is singing off-key while stirring something in a pot. He feels a strange tightness in his chest. It's not hate. It's not exactly love either. It's something heavier. Something like responsibility. That evening, the fire crackles with leftover damp wood. Anya retells her version of the storm, which now includes flying goats and a lightning duel between clouds. Milla listens patiently, sewing, her fingers dancing like always. Elric watches them. Later, as the fire dies down, he speaks. "If I left," he says slowly, "what would happen?" Milla doesn't look up. "We'd manage, we always do." Anya is asleep, clutching her doll. Elric leans back, staring at the ceiling. "I don't want to go because I hate this place," he murmurs. Milla finally sets her work down. "We know," she says gently. "You want to go because you hope there's more." He nods. "And that," she says, "is the most dangerous thing of all." The wind outside is settled, but inside Elric, a storm is just beginning. The next few days unfold like a loop made of mud and repetition. The village, having barely recovered from the storm, dives headfirst back into the comforting arms of exhaustion. Roofs need fixing. Livestock need rounding up. Crops, those eternal drama queens, need draining, airing, and mild begging to not rot in place. Elric tries to lose himself in the work. He chops wood until his hands go numb, helps Rig dig a new trench for runoff water, helps Tomlin retrieve a bucket that mysteriously moved itself halfway down the well shaft. It didn't, his grandchild kicked it, but no one corrects Tomlin because he carries a stick and opinions. Still, the more Elric works, the more he notices it. The itch. Not on his skin, but under it. A restlessness, a question that won't shut up. Every time he looks at the horizon, it whispers, "You could go." And every time he turns away, it sneers, but you won't. One morning, while hauling a sack of grain to the storehouse, Elric hears news that shoves that whisper right into a full-throated yell. A traveler has arrived, not a merchant or a messenger, just a man, mid-30s, weather-beaten, wrapped in a patched-up cloak that's seen every corner of the kingdom. He carries no cart, just a walking stick, a satchel, and a quiet, wary smile. He goes by Corin. The village reacts the only way it knows how, cautiously and with food. Milla, curious but polite, sends Elric to deliver a loaf of bread to the chapel where Corin has been offered shelter for the night. Elric approaches, bread in one hand, suspicion in the other. Corin sits on the chapel step, polishing his boots with a rag that might once have been a shirt. "You're Elric, aren't you?" the man says without looking up. Elric freezes. "How do you?" Word travels, even when legs are tired. He pats the step beside him. Elric hesitates, then sits. They share silence for a while. Then Corin speaks. "You've got the look." "What look?" "The one people get when they've seen the world through a keyhole and want to kick down the door." Elric tries to scoff, but it comes out more like a cough. "I'm fine," he lies. "Sure," Corin says, smiling, "and I came here for the weather." He takes the bread, tears off a piece, chews thoughtfully. "This place," he says between bites, "is better than most. I know, but it'll never be enough for you." Elric looks away. "I have responsibilities," Corin nods. "You do. They need me." "Of course." He leans back. "But you're not asking if you should leave. You're asking if you're allowed to." Elric doesn't answer. Corin finishes the bread, dusts his hands. "I've seen cities, ports, mountains. I've slept on gold coins and in pig pens. I've been a hero and a fool, sometimes in the same hour." He stands, slings his bag over his shoulder. "And I can tell you this, the road is never easy, but it's never silent." He walks off, whistling. Elric stares after him long after he disappears down the lane. That night, sleep does not come. He lies in the dark, listening to the wind. Every creak of the roof feels like a clock ticking. In the morning, Milla hands him a list: repairs, errands, grain to weigh. He takes it, nods, starts his tasks. But at the stream, he stops, stares at the water, and thinks for the first time, maybe the list can wait. Because somewhere down the road, past the trees and the hills and the noise of everything he's ever known, is a lemon, and Elric wants to taste it. There's something about the last time you do something ordinary that makes it feel like a ceremony. Elric didn't expect that. He thought leaving would feel like a torch in the night or a door slamming shut, but instead it feels like washing your face and realizing this might be the final time you dry it with that particular rag. Not because the rag will disappear, but because you will. It's a quiet feeling. Like standing in a room you know by heart and suddenly noticing how small it really is. He's been planning in silence. Not the dramatic kind with secret maps and daring escapes, but the slow, cautious kind where you count your socks and weigh cheese like it's gold. Milla doesn't ask, she just starts leaving little things near his bed. A better belt, a pouch of herbs for cuts and fevers, the good needle. She never says the words, but her hands are speaking them every time they pass him a crust or brush straw from his shoulder. Anya's too young to understand. She's been building a fort under the table, planning to fight badgers for the kingdom. Elric helps her tie the last corner of the sheet. "A warrior always secures the flank," he says. She salutes him with a ladle. That night, the fire crackles low, and the hut glows in that warm, familiar way that only happens when everyone's pretending things are fine. Milla is sewing again. Of course she is. When words fail, her fingers talk. "I'm going," Elric says. He doesn't mean to say it aloud. It just happens. She nods once, like she's been waiting for the sound. "When? You'll take the road past the chapel." He hadn't said which road. She already knew. He hesitates. "I don't know where I'm going." She looks up. "Good. Good. Means you're going to learn something." He shifts. "What if I fail?" "You will." That stops him. She keeps sewing. "You'll fail, and then you'll fail better. And one day you'll succeed, and it'll taste like something you've earned." He doesn't speak after that. The night is long, but not heavy. They eat in peace. They don't say goodbye, not really. Because in families like this, goodbye sounds too much like the last word. And Elric isn't ready to speak in endings. He sleeps a little. Dreams of walking, not running, not fighting, not surviving, just walking. In a place where the wind doesn't smell like damp straw and the sky doesn't feel like a lid. Before the sky shifts from black to gray, he rises. He dresses slowly, wraps bread in cloth, takes the bundle Mila left by the door. Inside is everything he needs. Almost nothing and a bit of hope. He doesn't wake Anya. He just kneels by her straw pile and whispers, "Stay fierce, General." She mumbles something about the Badger Treaty. Outside, the world is holding its breath. The village sleeps behind him. The road, still dark, stretches like a story waiting to be written. He walks. Past the chapel, where the bell is silent. Past Brighta's loom, where thread hangs like spider silk. Past Rig's shed, where something's definitely on fire again, but no one will notice until later. Everything is still. Until a voice. "You didn't say goodbye." Brita stands by the stream, arms crossed, cloak wrapped tight. "You weren't supposed to be awake. Neither were you." They stand in silence. Then, "You'll get lost," she says. "I hope so. You'll get hungry. I've got cheese. You'll miss this place." He nods. "Already do." She looks at him for a long moment, eyes sharp like flint. Then she steps forward and presses something into his hand. It's a lemon, small, wrinkled, but unmistakable. "I've been saving it," she says, "in case you forgot why." Elric stares at it. "You're serious?" "Deadly." He smiles. "Thank you." She steps back. "Come back if you need to, or don't. Just don't die for something stupid." Define stupid. "Milking a bear." "Fair." He turns, walks. This time he doesn't look back. The lemon is warm in his hand. The world is enormous, and finally, so is he. The road is not smooth. It isn't paved with purpose or destiny. It's rutted, muddy, and shaped more by goat hooves than grand adventures. Elric had imagined something else, something noble. Maybe a long, straight path flanked by tall trees, birdsong, and occasional epiphanies. Instead, it's mostly rocks and the relentless squelch of wet soil underfoot. Still he walks. With each step, the village behind him fades, not just in distance, but in weight. He no longer carries the routines, the expectations, the soft hush of Mila's sewing needle stitching survival into every evening. He carries bread and cheese and a lemon, and something stranger, the knowledge that he chose this. Mid-morning brings a mist that clings to the road like indecision. Every turn looks the same. Every bush sounds like it's whispering. He stays alert, one hand always near his knife, not because he expects bandits, but because the world is large, and he is still learning how to take up space in it. He meets no one until midday. A tinker, pushing a wheelbarrow of broken pots and aggressive optimism, appears from a fork in the road. The man grins like someone who's made peace with misfortune. "First time walking the kingdom?" he asks. "Is it that obvious?" Elric replies. The tinker gestures to Elric's boots. "You're walking like someone who thinks the road owes you kindness." "It doesn't?" The man laughs. "It owes you nothing, but it might surprise you." They share a crust of bread, a few sips from a shared flask, and a moment of wordless camaraderie only found on roads where both ends are uncertain. Then the tinker rolls off, whistling a tune that sounds suspiciously like someone losing a bet. Elric continues. The land changes subtly. Trees grow thicker, the air feels heavier. He passes a stone shrine draped in moss, its figure too worn to identify. He leaves a coin anyway, one of the few Reynold hadn't taxed into oblivion, just in case. By late afternoon, hunger begins to whisper. He finds a fallen log, unwraps his provisions. The bread is already going stale, the cheese has become aggressively fragrant, but the lemon, oh, the lemon remains defiant. He doesn't eat it, not yet. Instead, he holds it. It fits perfectly in his palm, bright, absurd, and completely out of place. A reminder of something sharp, something new. He repacks, drinks from a nearby stream, and presses on. The sun begins its descent, painting the sky with bruised orange and soft blue. Shadows lengthen, the wind shifts, and in the distance, smoke. Not the kind from disaster, the kind from hearths. A village. He quickens his pace. It's smaller than his own. Just 10 huts and a crooked chapel, but it has life. Children chasing chickens, a woman hanging damp clothes, a man struggling with a barrel that clearly does not want to be moved. Elric approaches cautiously. The man with the barrel spots him. "You lost?" "No," Elric says. "Just not found yet." The man laughs. "We've got stew and a dry place to sleep, but you'll have to earn it." Elric nods. "What's the job? Help me convince this barrel to move." It takes both of them 3 grunts and 1 accidental foot injury, but they succeed. The man, Farron, he says, offers a place by the fire and a bowl of stew that tastes like boiled everything, but it's hot and plentiful. Around the fire, Elric listens to stories, to arguments about whether stew should include garlic. He says little, but he feels not out of place. Later, as the village settles, Farron offers him space in the loft of the chapel. Elric climbs the ladder, lies back on straw, and stares through the rafters at a moon he hasn't looked at in years. He reaches into his bag, pulls out the lemon, holds it to his nose. It smells like memory and possibility. He doesn't sleep for a long time, because this night, like the road, like the decision, like the future, is his. Danyan, de la Van Ban, Banda Kun Cup. Morning in the new village arrives not with a bang, but with a shuffle. A chorus of half-asleep chickens clamor for breakfast. Someone's already locked horns with a donkey over who gets the first swale of hay. A pot drops in the distance, breaking the hush with a dull thud that echoes like an invitation. Day's beginning. Elric blinks into the soft light filtering between the rafters of the chapel loft. Beneath him, the straw is dry, shockingly bone dry, a gift to a man accustomed to damp surprises. The loft smells of last season's hay and someone else's secret. Yet despite its imperfections, it feels like a cradle, its warmth, its home, at least for now. He swings his legs over the edge of the loft and stretches muscles that throb in unfamiliar patterns. Yesterday's journey left him sore in places he never knew existed. Muscles that resisted the village's rhythm are now singing new notes under damp skies and wandering feet. He rubs his arms in a sleepy attempt to wake up his body. Down below, there's movement, a voice. Elric! The morning calls to him. Farron, his host, neighbor, and accidental teacher, stands by a stack of firewood, splitting logs as if each swing means safety and breakfast for everyone. Burly and gruff with a kind face, Farron looks up at him with a full-throated grin. You sleep like someone with no regrets, Farron calls. Too stiff to regret anything, Elric replies, descending the ladder. The wood creaks with familiarity, like an old friend sighing with relief. Good, says Farron. Means you're doing something right around here. Elric nods, shrugging into his damp cloak. He steps outside, cold air biting his cheeks, and together they begin the morning's work. They haul kindling toward the hearth in the chapel. They repair a sagging chicken coop. They chase away a particularly judgmental goose that has staked its claim on the village path, because someone has to, and who better than Elric? He mutters apologies at the bird, but it only honks in triumph. By mid-morning, Farron glances at Elric, wiping sweat on his sleeve. You thinking of staying? Elric glances back toward the chapel doors. I don't know yet. Smart answer, Farron says quietly. This place doesn't bite, but it does expect things. He pauses on that last word. Help when you're needed, then we'll talk. Elric nods again. He understands. In this village, survival isn't done alone. It's a stitch in a living quilt, shared by hands and hearts. So far, no one's looked at him suspiciously. Maybe they sense he comes to work, not just to wander. Maybe they understand what it's like to leave too. By noon, he's earned himself more than just acceptance. He's earned lunch. He finds Lysa, the farmer's wife, stirring a pot over embers behind her cottage. The village's sun-grimed homes huddle close, as if bracing each other against wind and winter. She looks up, ladle in hand, and smiles. There's a festival tomorrow, she tells him in low tones, eyes flicking to a stack of barley sacks inside her cottage. Barley harvest, small, but we make it loud. Elric raises an eyebrow. A festival? That sounds like fun, or chaos, or both. Festival? Not your fancier feast, Lysa says. Nothing royal robes about it, but we dance, we laugh, we eat. She turns the spoon thoughtfully. And perhaps you'd like to help hang the flags today? He smiles at her mixture of pride and relief. I don't dance. I dance like someone running from bees. She laughs. Perfect. You'll fit right in. The afternoon stretches. Elric helps Farron haul sacks, repair fence posts, and mend a gate that collapsed under its own weight. Each task is a stitch in a broader rhythm. A fence repaired means chickens stay inside, which means worms feed the earth, which means barley grows stronger. He's part of something bigger, harder to describe than sadness, harder to shake than fear. By evening, prepared for the festival, the village gathers around an open clearing. A fire pit smolders at the center, surrounded by crates and benches. Faded banners, a collection of cloth scraps tied to long poles, flutter gently in the cool wind, as if cheering, "You made it!" to each passerby. There's food and drink, simple but satisfying. Stew bubbling in a giant pot, onions and potatoes that taste like victory. They light more wood in the pit, and soon the night glows orange. Children chase each other, tripping on cloaks and giggling when they tumble into the grass. Old men lean on canes, offering advice that starts with, "Back in my day," but everyone just smiles along. Women drum on kettles. Laughter rises and fills the space between cabins and sky. Elric stands at the edge, hands pressed into pockets, watching. He hasn't danced yet. He probably won't dance properly. He may even trip, but there's something else working inside him. Acceptance deepening into belonging. A man named Henry notices him. "You come for the festival not out of tradition, but curiosity," he says. "Elric," he replies, "I come for reasons." "No matter, stay." Elric nods. He watches as couples form beside the fire, barefoot or in patched boots, stepping awkwardly to the beat of pots and hands. He wants to dance, almost, not because he thinks he'll do well, but because he wants to test what belonging feels like in motion. He steps forward, carefully, his feet clumsy, muddied. Someone offers a bowl of stew. He takes it, heat warms him. He takes another step, then another. The rhythm takes him, slow, uncertain, real. It doesn't matter if he stumbles. It matters that he moves with the crowd now, not apart. And for a moment, the entire clearing seems to breathe with him. Later, after the dancing, after the singing, after the laughter fades into passing stories and sleepy smiles, Elric retreats to the hillside behind the chapel. He lies on cool grass, watching embers drift up into the dark. He pulls the lemon from his pocket. It's sticky now, warmed from constant handling. He turns it over, examining its rough surface. It's small, wrinkled, unlikely, yet full of promise. He raises it to his lips. He doesn't bite, not yet. He lies back, gazing at the treetops against a night sky, open, vast, and inviting. This night, nothing threatens him, not the road, not the storm, not the weight of leaving. Only possibility sits beside him, quiet and kind. He hasn't decided what tomorrow holds, but tonight he dances. Tonight he belongs, and tonight, that's enough. The first thing Elric does that morning is spit out the lemon. Not because it was a bad idea, it wasn't. It was necessary, symbolic, poetic even, but the juice hit him like an insult to all things culinary. Sharp, acidic, and completely unrepentant. He coughs, wipes his mouth on his sleeve, and mutters, "That's enough meaning for one day." Then he laughs, out loud, to no one. It echoes just a little across the low, dew-soaked hills beyond the village, a strange light sound, as if joy snuck up behind him and poked him in the ribs. He stands, shaking sleep and citrus from his senses, and watches the mist lift off the fields. A thin layer of gold creeps across the land, warming fences and footprints alike. Birds sing like they just discovered gossip. Somewhere nearby, a rooster tries to catch up. Today is not like yesterday. Elric feels it immediately. Not in the weather, not in the chores, but in the shape of his own chest. His breath is deeper. Slower, like something inside has exhaled after years of holding tension. For the first time in a long while, he is not bracing for disappointment. He walks back into the village, half expecting someone to stop him and demand he explain himself. But no one does. Not Farron, who is carrying hay like he's wrestling it into submission. Not Lysa, who is already baking. Not the goose, who only stares with its usual ancient judgment. Elric helps carry water from the well, mends a few roof tiles with Farron. He even tries his hand at turning soil in the communal garden, where a girl older than 10 corrects his grip on the spade with a sigh that says, "Men!" The village is alive. Not in the way the keep had been, slick and polished and echoing with command, but alive like a hearth, a place where warmth comes from many hands, not firewood alone. By mid-morning, Elric is wiping sweat from his brow and eating an apple that's far too sour to enjoy. And he couldn't care less. It's food. It's earned. It's here. He thinks, not for the first time, of Milla, of Anya, of Reynold's ever-looming scowl, of Brida's lemon, of Riggs' endless list of ideas involving soup and rope. He wonders what they're doing right now, if someone's noticed he's gone, if they've already filled his spot at the table or left it open, just in case. But there is no pull. No tight thread dragging him back, just quiet memory. "Hey," Farron calls, pulling him from thought. "You coming to the river?" Elric raises an eyebrow. Why? Because someone's got to convince the cart not to drown. Apparently, the cart had been left too close to the bank after the last rain, and now its wheel is sinking slowly into something that looks more like pudding than soil. A A few villagers stand around it, like offering helpful suggestions like try pulling harder and maybe we sacrifice a chicken. Elric joins the chaos, sleeves rolled up, boots planted, to gig, pull, swear creatively. And finally, after enough shouting to frighten the nearby frogs, the cart gives up its grip on the earth and lurches free with a sound not unlike a cow sneezing. Everyone cheers, even the goose. And as they laugh and lean on shovels, something shifts in Elric's chest again. Not a decision, but a knowing. He can leave. Tomorrow, next week, next year. He can stay. For a while, or longer. The world is still out there, full of lemons and cities and maps he's never seen, but it's not going anywhere. And for now, neither is he. Later that evening, as the sun dips low and paints the world in sleepy amber, Elric finds a quiet place under a tree near the village edge. He sits cross-legged, hands behind his head, listening to the wind drag stories across the grass. He pulls out what's left of the lemon, takes a small bite, just enough to remember, then leans back and smiles. Because sometimes the point of the road isn't where it takes you. It's knowing you have the feet to walk it. The village has begun to fold Elric into its rhythm like he's always been there. Not with applause, not with ceremony, but in the quiet ways that matter. The way people start saying his name mid-sentence instead of asking for that boy who helped with the hay. The way the baker, without comment, adds a second slice of bread to his morning meal. The way the old man with one eye nods to him every time they pass. Acknowledgement, not curiosity. Elric doesn't even notice at first. But on the third morning after the festival, when he helps patch the eastern fence and someone tosses him a water skin and just says, "Cheers, Elric," like it's the most normal thing in the world, that's when it is becoming part of the landscape. And that realization makes him stop, literally. He's standing by a post, one hand gripping a coil he can't move, not from fear, not from doubt, but from a strange, deep stillness. A moment so quiet inside his bones, it hums. Because this was the thing he didn't know he was looking for. Not a castle, not glory, not the perfect road leading to some imagined future. Just this, belonging without asking, presence without proving. For a boy who once stared at lemons like they were stars, this simple reality is dizzying. Later, he walks to the edge of the fields where the path forks, one toward the hills and the unknown, the other circling back to the village like a loyal dog. He sits by a mossy stone and watches a wagon trundle down the distant road, a merchant whistling a broken tune as his oxen plod forward with the patience of saints. Elric wonders where he's going, wonders what lies beyond those hills now that he's tasted something different than longing. For a second, just a flicker, he thinks about packing again. Not out of escape, not out of frustration, but because it's still in him, that itch to see, to know, to chase. But he doesn't move. Instead, he stays until the wagon is a smudge against the sky. Then he walks back, because the village is preparing for planting. And Elric has been asked, not ordered, to help mark out the lines in the southern field. It's just a rope, 2 sticks, and a few hours of dragging dusty feet across uneven soil, but it feels like something sacred. He spends the rest of the day digging furrows, learning to read the earth like it's a sleeping animal. Don't prod too deep, don't flood it, don't ask it to give more than it has. A boy named Ren, barely 12, is assigned to work beside him. Ren talks constantly about frogs, about clouds, about how his cousin once tried to train a squirrel to pick locks. Elric listens, smiling, because Ren reminds him of Anya, of home, of things he didn't expect to miss but now treasure like smuggled gold. When the work ends and the sun dips low behind the hills, Elric is covered in dirt, sweat, and a happiness so quiet it doesn't need a name. He walks to the stream to wash his hands. The water is cold, biting, clear. He splashes it over his face, breathes in, lifts his head, he sees his reflection. Not a stranger, not a runaway, just Elric. A boy who left. A boy who stayed. A boy who learned that sometimes the most courageous thing you can do is stop running and start growing. He dries his face on his sleeve, smiles at nothing, and heads home, wherever that may now be. By the time Elric reaches the village square the next morning, something is clearly off. It's not the weather. That's fine, cool, dry, with a sky the color of faded linen. And it's not the people. They're all present. Lysa loading bread onto her stall, Farron cursing at a wheelbarrow, Ren trailing after the goose with a spoon like he's staging a coup. No, it's the air itself, tense, tighter than usual, like everyone is holding their breath. Elric slows his steps. At the center of the square stands a man no one recognizes. That alone is cause for alarm. This isn't the kind of place people wander into, not unless they're lost, hungry, or dangerous. The man doesn't look hungry. He's clean, well-fed. His cloak is thick and tailored, dyed in colors too deep for peasantry. His boots shine, his hands are gloved, and his posture too upright, too aware. He's the kind of man who looks at things not to see them, but to evaluate their usefulness, and he's staring at Elric. Immediately, Elric feels his stomach twist. Because this man isn't just a stranger, he's a threat dressed in courtesy. Lysa leans in. He's been asking questions about someone who came from another village, about you. Elric keeps his face calm. What did you tell him? Nothing, but we're not blind, Elric. The man steps forward, boots whispering across the dirt. You must be Elric. It's not a question, Elric nods slowly. And you are? The man smiles. It doesn't reach his eyes. My name is Aldrin. I represent certain interests in the Northern Territories. Word travels, about young men who leave without permission. Behind him, villagers begin to drift closer, not aggressive, not protective, just present, like trees that know when a storm is coming. I left no contract, Elric says. No, but your absence was noted, and certain individuals, let's say people with power, don't appreciate variables they didn't approve. Elric exhales. He knows what this is. It's not about him, it's about precedent. One boy leaves, others might follow. One escape becomes a crack in the wall. Aldrin steps closer. You're not in trouble, yet. You could come back, quietly. There are roles for boys with your experience. Work, opportunity. He says opportunity the way a butcher says knife. Elric doesn't flinch. No. Aldrin tilts his head. No, I'm not going back. You think this, he gestures at the village, at the mud, the smoke, the half-finished fences, is better? Elric says. Silence. Aldrin's smile tightens. You should think carefully. I have. Elric says it not with defiance, but with peace. A kind of certainty that doesn't need armor. Aldrin doesn't argue. He just looks at Elric, at the crowd forming, so at the soft circle of community that now stands between him and his quarry. He straightens. Very well, he says, but choices have consequences. He turns, mounts a waiting horse that no one saw arrive, and rides off without another word. When he's gone, no one speaks. But something deep in the earth seems to say. Later, Farron claps Elric on the shoulder. Elder, suppose you're one of us now. I thought I already was. You were, but now you've been tested and we saw what you chose. That night around the fire, no one mentions Aldrin. Instead, they pass bread, tell stories, laugh about Ren and the Goose Rebellion. Elric doesn't speak much. He just sits, listens, and realizes he's not running anymore. Not from danger, not from himself, not from the past. He's standing, and for the first time the ground isn't just under him, it's holding him up. Rain returns the next day. Not the vengeful, roof-rattling kind that demands offerings and flood ditches, but a quiet, thoughtful drizzle. The kind that seeps into everything without making a fuss. The kind that makes the whole world smell like wet bark and growing things. Elric wakes before sunrise, pulled from sleep by a dream of stone steps and running water. He doesn't remember the details, just the feeling of going somewhere he needed to go. He sits up, rubs his eyes, presses and stretches in the loft until his spine sounds like a staircase giving in. Today is different. Not tense like yesterday when Aldrin appeared like a crack in a mirror, but not entirely peaceful either. There's a sense of shift, like the village has taken a breath and held it in, unsure of what to do next. Downstairs, Farron is already stoking the fire. His beard is damp from the rain, his cloak thrown over a stool like it insulted him. He nods at Elric. You sleep through the thunder? There was thunder? Exactly. They share a quiet breakfast, porridge with a few shriveled berries, tea that tastes faintly of mint and smoke. No one mentions Aldrin, but they don't have to. His shadow isn't gone yet, just faded into the corners. After eating, Elric walks into the village square. It's nearly empty. Most are inside, mending or resting or finding excuses to stay dry. But Ren is there, of course, barefoot, standing in the puddles, trying to teach a chicken how to swim. You know, Elric says, some creatures weren't meant for glory. It's an experiment, Ren replies, dead serious. The chicken looks at both of them like it's drafting a lawsuit. Elric moves on, smile tugging at his lips. He finds Lysa near the edge of the fields, under a tarp, sewing a basket handle back into place. You're leaving soon, aren't you? She says without looking up. Elric pauses. I don't know, he admits, but you feel it. He does, not like before, not the itch to escape, the hunger for elsewhere. This is different. A tug, a suggestion, a question forming just behind the horizon. You could stay, she adds, still focused on her work. Plenty of need for good hands, and you've got two. I know, but you won't. No. She ties off the thread. That's not ungrateful. That's honest. He nods, leaves her with the basket and the drizzle. He walks the paths, greets the few who pass him, feels the way his feet no longer hesitate, how his hands know the shapes of tools here, how the door to the chapel creaks exactly twice when opened. He's part of this place, and that's why he can leave, because roots aren't chains. And Elric has learned something vital in his time here, something no castle, no field, no lemon ever taught him before. He is allowed to want more, not out of spite, not out of rebellion, but because growing is not betrayal. He returns to the chapel loft and begins to pack. He doesn't own much, a few coins, a knife, the lemon peel, now dried and wrinkled but still defiantly yellow, a small sketch, Anya's stick figures under a crooked roof. He tucks it all into his bag. Downstairs he finds Farron. I'll be gone by dawn. Farron doesn't flinch. We figured. You're not going to try and stop me? Wouldn't work. You're not angry, only that you're not taking Ren and the goose with you. Elric snorts. Then, silence. Farron offers his hand, rough, solid. You'll do well, boy. Thanks to this place. Because of who you are. They clasp hands. Say no more. That evening, Elric walks one last time through the fields. The rain has stopped, leaving the earth slick and rich with scent. Every corner of the village glows gently with lamplight and fire warmth. Doors open and close. Laughter spills. Pots rattle. Life continues. No one says goodbye, but as he passes, each person nods, small wordless acknowledgments, not farewell. Just permission. At the edge of the road, Elric turns once, not to see what he's leaving behind, but to remember how far he's come. Then he faces forward and walks. No destination, no map, only movement, and something like freedom burning steady in his chest. The road is familiar now, not the stones or turns themselves, but the rhythm, the feeling of sky above and uncertainty ahead, the way the earth meets his boots like it's listening, not judging. Elric walks with a steady pace, not rushed, not wandering. A man who knows he's moving, even if the destination is still somewhere between maybe and we'll see. It's been 3 days since he left the village. Rain still lingers in the trees, dripping onto his shoulders now and then like an indecisive ghost. His cloak smells like smoke and wet leaves, his bread's gone stale, and his socks are mostly held together by the sheer power of hope. And still, he smiles, because this time he's not walking away. He's walking toward. What exactly? Hard to say, but the world feels bigger than it did last time. Not because it is, but because he is. And that changes everything. Mid-morning brings a fork in the path, one side leading into dark woods, the other winding toward the hills. He sits at the split, pulling out his last piece of cheese. It's tough as bark and tastes like ambition, but he chews it anyway. As he eats, he hears voices. Not loud, not angry, but tense. He slips closer, crouching low behind a boulder, peering down the hill. 3 men, 1 wagon, and a 4th figure, smaller, cloaked, cornered near a tree. Bandits. Elric's heart kicks against his ribs. He could walk away, keep to the forest, pretend he didn't see. But he doesn't, because somewhere between fixing fences and dancing badly, he grew a spine and a sense of not today. He grabs a stone, not much of a weapon, but enough. He circles behind the scene, careful, quiet, until he's close enough to shout. Hey! 4 heads turn. 1 man laughs. You lost, boy. No, Elric says, but you are. Then he throws the stone. It hits 1 square in the back of the head, not hard enough to kill, but plenty to offend. The cloaked figure uses the distraction to run. Chaos erupts. Elric dives, grabs a branch, swings like he has any idea what he's doing. It's not graceful, but it works. Within moments, the would-be robbers scatter, one limping, one swearing, one tripping over his own confidence. Elric breathes hard, turns. The cloaked figure stands watching. Slowly, the hood comes down. A girl, no older than Elric. Sharp eyes, dirt-smudged face, a dagger on her hip, and defiance in her stance. "You're either very brave," she says, "or incredibly stupid. Bit of both." "Fair. I'm Elric. I'm Nessa." They shake hands, then laugh, awkward, breathless, relieved. She's a traveler, like him, from the east, on her way to a coastal town whose name she won't reveal. "Not yet," she says. "Not until I know you won't sell me for soup." They walk together after that. Not far, not fast, but side by side. And for the first time, Elric realizes something else. The road doesn't have to be walked alone, even the ones that lead nowhere in particular, especially those. Elric has never traveled with someone before. Not really, not for more than a mile or two. Not long enough to realize that walking beside someone changes the rhythm of everything. You have to match pace, share silence, share bread, and occasionally share extremely pointed opinions about how soup should not contain raisins. Nessa, for the record, is firmly pro-raisin. It's sweet and savory, she argues as they sit beside a creek that evening, eating a very questionable stew she insisted on making. "It's betrayal in a bowl," Elric replies, poking the mixture suspiciously. She laughs. "You're just uncultured. You're just dangerous." But he eats it. Because it's warm. Because he's tired. Because sometimes the worst tasting things carry the most comfort when shared with someone who'd also fight off 3 bandits with you. They camp under a tangle of birch trees, building a small fire with damp twigs and curses. Nessa shows him how to position stones to keep the heat, how to set traps for small game. She talks fast, hands moving like they're sketching the night. She's different from anyone he's met. Braver, maybe, or simply more used to carrying sharp things in her boots. When Elric asks where she's really from, she shrugs. "A town that stopped mattering to me a long time ago." He nods. He understands. They don't press each other for stories. Instead, they trade little things. Her half-broken compass, his sketch of Anya's stick figures, a bit of salted meat, a scrap of cloth that once served as a map corner. And somewhere between last stars rising and the fire dying, Nessa leans back and says, "You've got a quiet kind of strength, you know." Elric looks at her. Not flattered, just seen. "You too," he replies. They sleep beneath the open sky, cloaks drawn tight, the crackling fire their only barrier against the chill. Somewhere, an owl calls. Water gurgles over stone, a fox pads by and decides they're not worth the trouble. In the morning, Elric wakes first. He doesn't move. Just lies there, watching sunlight try to push through the branches, listening to Nessa breathe softly, hearing the world decide slowly to begin again. For the first time in a long time, the future doesn't feel heavy. It feels open. Nessa stirs, muttering something about raisin rights, and Elric smiles, because the road may be long, but now it has company. The forest thins after 3 days, giving way to broad hills brushed with dry grass and tiny yellow flowers that seem to sprout purely out of optimism. The sky is clearer now, wide, blue, and entirely too smug about it. The rain is gone, replaced by a sun that doesn't scorch but does politely insist on its presence. Elric and Nessa walk side by side, dust curling behind their boots. They talk less than before. Not because there's tension, quite the opposite. Silence has grown comfortable between them, like a third companion that needs no introduction. When they do speak, it's often in questions. "Do you think we'll reach the sea? Do you believe dreams are supposed to make sense? Do birds ever get bored of flying?" Each answer is less important than the asking. That morning they cross a wide field dotted with ancient stone markers. Not graves, Elric thinks, at least not human ones. They're rough and moss-covered, older than memory, placed in a pattern that suggests someone once cared about symmetry. Nessa runs her fingers across one, frowns. "Feels like a place that remembers," she says. They don't linger long. By afternoon, they pass through a tiny hamlet. 3 houses, 1 cart, and a dog that acts like it owns the entire valley. The villagers are polite, distant. They trade some dried meat for a handful of boiled eggs and a cloth pouch of salt. That night, they camp in a hollow overlooking a shallow stream. Elric gathers firewood while Nessa lays out their few supplies. He watches the way she moves. Calculated, sure. someone who spent too much of life preparing for it to fall apart. He knows that feeling. When the fire catches, they eat in silence. Nessa chews slowly, watching the flames. Finally, she says, "When I was 10, my town flooded, not once but twice." Elric doesn't interrupt. "The first time we rebuilt. The second time the Lord sent men to assist. You can imagine what that meant." He nods. She continues, "I left with 2 other kids, only I made it past the next town." Another pause. Then she adds, "I don't tell people that. Not often." "I haven't told many people about my sister," Elric replies, "or my village." Nessa smiles. "Not wide, but real." "Maybe that's the trade," she says. "Stories for stories." Seems fair. They sit like that a while, watching the coals fall inward. The wind picks up. Nessa wraps her cloak tighter. Elric throws another stick on the fire. And for a long moment, neither one of them is thinking about where they came from, only where they're going. Later, as sleep creeps close, Nessa whispers, "Do you think we're becoming something?" Elric turns his head. "Like what?" She shrugs into her blanket. "More." He watches the stars for a long time after that, then says softly, "I hope so." And this time silence answers back like a promise. The next morning begins with a strange scent, something between cinnamon and smoke. Elric wakes first, nose twitching, mind fuzzy with dreams he can't quite recall. He sits up slowly, brushing dew from his cloak, and sees Nessa already crouched by the fire, brow furrowed. "That smell," she says. "You smell it too, right?" Elric nods. "It's not from our fire." They pack quickly. No words needed. Instinct speaks louder than conversation. The scent grows stronger as they descend a gentle slope toward a thick copse of trees. A light haze hangs in the air, blue-gray and dancing like memory. It clings to their cloaks, sinks into their lungs, sweet, thick. Then they hear it. A voice. No, not a voice. A melody. Soft, wordless. Not quite singing, not quite humming, like someone breathing in tune with the wind. Nessa stiffens. Her hand drifts toward her dagger. Elric, slower, says, "It's not threatening. Doesn't mean it's safe." Still, they follow. The trees ahead part like a curtain, and they step into a clearing unlike any they've seen. A ring of stones, tall, lichen-covered, leaning at impossible angles, circles a space that hums with something deep and old. In the center stands a woman, or something shaped like a woman. Her clothes ripple like they're made of smoke. Her hair drapes past her shoulders, black as crow feathers and moving though there's no wind. Her eyes closed, open the moment they step into the ring. They do not glow, they do not burn, they just see. Nessa stops. "We shouldn't be here." The woman tilts her head, "And yet you are." Her voice is soft and layered, like 3 people speaking in perfect unison. Elric takes a breath. "We smelled something, followed it." "Few follow their senses these days," the woman replies. "Fewer still survive them." Nessa mutters, "That's not ominous at all." The woman smiles. "It is not comforting." "You're looking for something," she says, turning to Elric. He nods. "What is it?" He opens his mouth, stops, because he doesn't know. "Not exactly." "More," he says finally, "just more." The woman steps closer, her feet do not disturb the grass. "Then you must give something." Elric tenses. "Like what?" She raises one hand. "Your fear, or your name, or your memory of home." Elric swallows. "Why?" "Because the road you want does not run on coin," she says. "It runs on who you're willing to stop being." Silence. Nessa steps between them. He's not trading anything. The woman's gaze shifts. "You protect him, I walk with him." "Same thing," the woman says. "Different cost." For a long moment, no one moves. Then Elric speaks. "I can't give my name, or my memories, or my fear." The woman nods. "You're not ready," Elric exhales. "Probably not, but you will be." And just like that, she's gone. No flash, no wind, just absence. The clearing falls still, the scent vanishes, even the haze lifts. Elric and Nessa look at each other. "I think we leave now," she says. "Agreed." They walk in silence until the trees thin again, and the world returns to normal, if it was ever normal to begin with. That night, as they camp under a sky swollen with stars, Nessa finally speaks. "You would have given something, if I hadn't stepped in." Elric pokes at the fire. "Maybe. I'm not sure that's brave." "Neither am I." They sit quietly for a while. Then Nessa says, "But it's honest." Elric nods and adds another stick to the fire. And just like that, our journey with Elric comes to a close, for now. But before we fully step away from the path, I want to hear from you. What part of Elric's story spoke to you the most? Was it the quiet village life, the strange encounter in the mist, Nessa and her raisin-filled rebellion, or maybe it was the simple act of walking forward, even without a destination? Drop your thoughts, theories, or even your own road-weary tales in the comments below. I read every one, and your reflections help shape the future of these midnight stories. If you've been with me this far, if you've smiled, laughed, or maybe teared up just a little, please consider subscribing to the channel. It helps me keep telling stories like this, ones with heart, mystery, and the occasional angry goose. And with that, I'll say good night or good morning, wherever you may be. Rest well, travelers, and meet me again next time for another tale under the stars.